introduce sort of this amazing panel for you today, we just put together a short presentation on highlighting some of the areas and trends we're seeing in financial services technology. So obviously, the category we now know is fintech has seen immense growth, and one of the ways to see that is just through the investment growth. So this category has gone from about 2.2 billion in funding in 2011 to over 14 billion in 2015, and deal activity over the same period has doubled. So massive investment growth, massive startup formation growth in financial services technology. When we obviously out of that, we have seen some valuable companies created, and that's across geographies, right? If you think about Asia and North America, this is just looking at the fintech unicorns, so companies that are valued, who are still private, valued at over $1 billion. 7 of those companies are in Asia, 4 of those are in Europe. And that's also across different areas. So verticals, whether that's in marketplace lending or wealth management, robo-advisory, and payments. We've seen companies that have been created across verticals that have accumulated that value creation. Obviously, it hasn't all been smooth sailing in fintech. We've seen marketplace lending has seen immense growth, obviously, and an economic surplus that model has created for borrowers. But in 2016, we saw that growth sort of lose a bit of its mojo as some of the heightened worries around consumer default and investor preferences, as well as sort of the hiccup at Lending Club, has deflated that a little bit. That translated, obviously, to some layoffs and across the lending space, especially on the consumer side, because of those worries. We have seen some of the robo-advisors have seen also slowing growth rates as well, and you see here in this chart sort of the bump from Schwab and Vanguard, who entered the market in 2015, and have since have since expanded very quickly in this space. So you look at the assets under management for Betterment, Wealthfront versus Vanguard and Schwab over time. Vanguard being sort of the dark blue there on the far right side. And in payments, one of the largest, sort of most high-profile failures in 2016 was POA Technologies in the payments processing space, in the payment space out of the UK. So obviously, it hasn't all been smooth sailing, right? This is just some of the examples. We've seen immense growth, but there have been some of these hiccups on the way. So what do we think about sort of as we look to sort of the next set of financial services innovation from a technology standpoint? Where are some of the areas that we see continued growth moving forward in the area? So some of the areas are in insurance, where especially in 2016 we saw an immense growth in terms of startup formation across both in the value chain as well as across different lines of insurance. Bitcoin and blockchain has also seen quite a few startups, and also now a bit of a reemergence now as we've seen sort of more early stage activity reemerge, and also the use of AI, which is what the panel will focus on, machine learning across sort of financial services broadly. So just very briefly, as we go through insurance, sort of the early wave of insurance, as we saw from a technology in terms of startup formation and as well as venture activity, happened in the healthcare space. So after ACA was passed and then upheld in 2012, we saw most of the early stage funding. If you think about the companies that were raising Series A's, were in the health space. So companies like Oscar, Collective Health, as well as others. So this is looking at 2013 and 2014 in terms of insurance tech as a whole and where those deals focused on, the majority of them being in health. Obviously, insurers are looking for more efficiencies given sort of low interest rates, and we've seen, especially on the P&C side, from a commercial P&C standpoint, a soft market continue. Reinsurers sort of see an opportunity to drive innovation. This is a quote from Munich Re, which is one of the largest reinsurers in the world, that the commoditization of reinsurance has created the need to explore new sources of revenue. And obviously, entrepreneurs have showed up to take on insurance, and that's probably the biggest thing that's driving this now. And that's resulting in a lot of early stage funding in the space. 2 of every 3 investments in insurance tech in 2016 were at the early stage. We are seeing a lot of startups who are looking at, for example, P&C and looking specifically at a particular part of it, and we've seen different startups emerge over time who are going after markets like homeowners and renters and looking to establish product innovation in those areas, or in, for example, small commercial P&C, and we see that as one of sort of the busiest areas last year in terms of insurance tech startup formation and investment in 2016. And life insurance as well, where it's been a little bit smaller and a bit under-indexed, but also seeing now more startups, as well as other companies like SoFi who are moving in and seeing an opportunity to to pursue that and add that to the, sort of their services. Blockchain and Bitcoin, obviously, I think the big story is that we did see Bitcoin prices roar back in early January and towards the end of 2016 to over $1,000. But when we look at media attention, and this is a chart from our platform, from a trends looking at just media articles for these two terms over time, the zeitgeist has definitely shifted to blockchain, and you see that over time, certainly. In 2016, we did see investment to blockchain and Bitcoin as a space as a whole fall for the first time in terms of deal activity, and you see that sort of here. It's the first time since tracking the area in 2011. And financial services firms have definitely been among the most active players, especially from a corporate venture standpoint, into blockchain. As you look here in terms of financial services incumbents who have made sort of a first investment over time into blockchain startups. And you see that sort of march, especially in the latter half of 2015 onward. But I think there's still a lot of exciting innovation that's happening, both driven by some of the major financial services firms as well as startups who are looking to do it as well. So, for example, Axoni, a company who's helping to bring transparency to credit default swaps. You see some of the a host of the sort of private consortiums who have emerged over time. I think over 25 of them now. One of them being R3CV or B3I. You see a lot more of that happening. And we're also seeing, startups pursue very ambitious goals in blockchain and Bitcoin. So for example, OpenBazaar, which is pursuing sort of a decentralized eBay model, or if you think about Blockstack, a company that just recently raised funding, pursuing more of a decentralized internet with a browser that's built on the Bitcoin blockchain. So definitely still a lot of exciting innovation on this front. And lastly, before we go into the panel, when we think about sort of AI and financial services, definitely still in its early innings when we look at sort of startups as well as those who have raised investment. It's very early in terms of those companies. When we look at sort of the other areas, whether that's in IoT wearables or healthcare, and comparatively across industries. But we're seeing a lot of companies, and a lot of them were highlighted in our AI 100 list, who are doing very interesting things, whether that's in algorithmic trading. We have Quantopian here on the panel, to personal finance bots, to other areas. And you're seeing a lot of startups who are trying to do that in a variety of different areas. One example, for example, is Numer AI, which is a crowdsourced hedge fund for machine learning experts, sort of who also receive payment in Bitcoin for their contributions to sort of this meta model that they're creating. You're seeing this in regulation, where for example, IBM acquired Promontory and will now teach sort of the consultants there about how to automate risk management and compliance tasks. And you're seeing this in areas like credit evaluation, where firms like where a firm are using machine learning models to predict against fraud and build credit data. So with that, we have a panel to definitely discuss the entire topic of AI and financial services. And I'm going to just turn it over to Cam in a second. But how soon I think will we see some of these major changes is hard to predict. Stephen Cohen was recently on a panel saying that these predictions are impossible to call, but it's going to be a while before we see a lot of sort of major impact of AI on financial services. And I think that's something that the panel will definitely be addressing, is when will we see some of that sort of real impact across the financial services industry. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cam, and he'll bring on the panel. Thanks.